Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I say the Honorable Mr. Ihsan, Lecturer in International Administration Organization, and friends who I'm proud of. We are from Group 3. As you can see on the screen, our team going to be talking about North Atlantic Treaty Organization or NATO. Let me introduce ourselves. I'm Ishiqa Ramadhany Putri. Next there are Fadila Candra Umairoh, Gioha Oktavian, and Hilman Guntara, also from Group 3. Our topic is very important for you because everybody will do presentation. So I hope that the audience pay attention to the material presented and listen carefully.
The history of the form of NATO. The historical background of the formation of NATO cannot be separated from the Western Bloc's competition with the Soviet Union after World War II. The initial idea of forming NATO was sparked by Britain and French who were concerned about the political tension at the start of the Cold War. Precisely in 1947-1948, a series of events caused Western European countries to become worried about their physical and political security. At first, Western European countries realized that in order to dispel the incessant influence of the Soviet Union and defend themselves from the Soviet Union's attack on March 17, 1948. 5 countries entered into an agreement, namely the Treaty of Brussels. The 5 countries are Belgium, France, England, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. The formation of the Treaty of Brussels made several Western European democracies unite to implement various projects for greater military cooperation and collective defense supported by the United States. This was marked by the signing of the North Atlantic Treaty on April 4, 1949 in Washington, United States. Meaning and purpose NATO. Initially, it was most likely to circumvent Western military restriction in preventing military aggression, especially the invasion of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union attacked a member of NATO, then he would be considered a threat to all members, so that NATO countries would help each other when the Soviet Union attacked. Thus, NATO was formed to suppress the communist influence of the Soviet Union with a rival alliance, the Warsaw Pact, during the war. Military organization NATO's goals is to maintain peace and security for its members in the political, military, and defense fields in the face of threats. The structure and members of NATO. NATO as an international organization has a great influence not only on its member countries, but also on the international world. Some of the countries that officially joined NATO membership are Albania, Belgium, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Italy, Canada, Croatia, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, France, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Turkey, United Kingdom, and United States, while the countries that are partners of NATO are Armenia, Austria, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Finland, Republic of Macedonia, Georgia, Ireland, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Malta, Moldova, Montenegro, Russia, Serbia, Sweden, Swiss, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, Uzbekistan. The success or failure of NATO depends on the official institutional rules that apply to NATO in the face of existing instruments in NATO, such as membership issues. decision-making system and mechanism. 6. Financial organization. The main structure of the NATO organization consists of the Council, the civilian structure or civilian branch, and the military structure or military branch.
The main structure of the NATO organization consists 1. Council. The Council is a supreme organ, a political organ in which every member, including France, places a representative. This organ is arranged in such a way as to be able to conduct the hearing at any time appropriately. These board procedures are somewhat different than usual. The Council has no voting procedure and has never actually made a decision by voting. The aim is to secure a unanimous agreement, and this illustrates the central character of the Council as a negotiating forum. All other bodies are under the NATO Council. The other bodies are partly civilian organizations as well as military organizations. Civilian branch or civil organization. The Defense Committee is a committee in which defense ministers from NATO members have a function of advising the Council on the implementation of Article 3 and Article 5 of the NATO Treaty that has been incorporated into the Council since 1951. There is no mention of other committees in the treaty. The Council usually uses its powers in general to establish committees in accordance with what is in Article 9 of the NATO Treaty. Some of these committees are more technical in nature, but others are given considerable competence and broad and include issues indicated by its name, as is the case with the Committee of Political Advisor, Committee of Economic Advisor, Defense Planning Committee, Defense Production Committee, Civil Defense Committee, Nuclear Defense Affairs Committee, and below there is a Nuclear Planning Group. Military branch or military organization. The military branch also runs under the auspice of the Council authorization. It is headed by the Military Committee, which is the NATO's highest military authority and consists of the Chief of Staff of all members except France. In addition, this military organization also consists of Allied Command Atlantic, Allied Command Channel, Allied Command Europe. Allied Command Europe is at the heart of NATO in tradition that has always been commanded by generals from the United States.
Organization and agencies. NATO has other agencies that deal with logistics, among others, production logistics, standardization that take care of emergency security plan issues, air travel and security management through NATO air traffic management, air defense, communication and information through NATO communication and information system, electronic warfare via NATO Electronic Warfare Advisory Committee or NIWAC, and meteorology through Military Committee Meteorological Group or MCMG, the Military Oceanography or Umairoh Group, Research and Technology through Research and Technology Organization or RTO, and last, Education and Training. NATO issues and handling. 1. The Kosovo conflict. 2. The Libyan conflict. 3. The Bosnia-Herzegovina conflict. And 4. Now the Ukraine and Russia conflict. The Kosovo conflict. The conflict in Kosovo started because of an attempt to eliminate ethnic Albanians, who are an ethnic minority, by ethnic Serb, who are the ethnic majority. Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic, who is ethnic Serbian, dreams of a greater Serbia, and because ethnic Albanians, who are an ethnic minority with a Muslim majority background, want to separate themselves from the Serbian majority with a Catholic majority background. Slobodan Milosevic immediately launched a violent action by military force to combat ethnic Albanian secession. The massacre of ethnic Albanians by the Serbian army under the command of Slobodan Milosevic drew protests from the United States and NATO countries. The United States and NATO threatened against the President of Serbia, Slobodan Milosevic, to stop the massacre of ethnic Albanians perpetrated by Serbian soldiers were ignored. This forced the United States and NATO to attack Serbia with the aim of saving ethnic Albanians and Kosovars. Since March 24, 1999, for 70 days, the NATO Air Force has been carrying out airstrikes against the former Yugoslavia to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe against the Muslim Albania population of Kosovo. Intervention was not permitted by the Security Council, and NATO did not seek prior permission on the grounds that the two permanent members states of the Security Council, Russia and China, would veto their actions. In this regard, NATO faced a serious dilemma, namely between the condemnation of the international community and the moral imperative to save the people of Kosovo. NATO has gone beyond legality and tried to convince the world that the aim of the intervention was to protect and save the people of Kosovo from the atrocities committed by the Yugoslav force. The Libyan conflict. The conflict in Libya occurred on February 15, 2011, beginning with widespread protests in various cities in Libya between anti-government demonstrations and security forces who want a revolution in their country against the Libyan government under the rule of President Muammar Gaddafi, who had been in power for 42 years. NATO role is to assist the effort of the Libyan people who want to overthrow the Gaddafi regime. In this incident, many victims fell because the Libyan people had to face the fully armored military force that had been ordered by Gaddafi to kill all those who were considered dangerous and want him to resign from the presidency until civil war broke out. In response to this, the UN Security Council issues a decision called UN Security Council Resolution number 1970 on February 26, 2011, which contained a appeal to the Libyan government to exercise restraint and respect human rights, ensure the safety of civilians, and take rescue action against the Libyan people. Then issued UN Security Council Resolution number 1973, March 17, 2011, on the deteriorating situation in Libya. The resolution is related to NATO carrying out humanitarian intervention in Libya. Namely, the mission carried out by NATO is only limited to command control and does not take side with one of the warring parties. The resolution has a mission consisting of three elements, namely an arms embargo, a no-fly zone, and action to protect civilians from attack or threat of attack. The role of the coalition forces is only limited to providing protection to people who experience humanitarian threats in the country. In addition coalition force by prohibit from occupying Libya for any reason and only form the authority to overthrow the Gaddafi regime, but replace it with a government originating from Libya itself. After 7 months of intervention, which started on 19 March 2011 till 31 October 2011, in the overthrow of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, NATO involvement has ended.
The Bosnia-Herzegovina conflict. NATO involvement in Bosnia and Herzegovina began in 1992 in June. At the end of the year, NATO declared that it stood to support peacekeeping operations under UN authority. NATO engaged in the military for the first time since the United Nations allowed a no-fly zone over Bosnia and Herzegovina. NATO began Operation Deny Flight in April 1993, and in August 1995, NATO successfully launched air strikes, ending 3 years of conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina. NATO leaders create an implementation force or E4 and stationed it in Bosnia and Herzegovina in December 1995 to carry out a 1-year mandate. The mandate was carried out not only to maintain peace, but also to protect the rights of civilians. The implementation of the mandate corresponds to the military aspect of the Daytona Peace Treaty for the agreement to end the Bosnia War. A year later, I4 was changed by NATO leadership to become the Stabilized Force or S4. On December 14, 1995, after the Daytona Peace Treaty was signed in Paris, France established Bosnia and Herzegovina as a single, democratic, and multi-ethnic country with 2 entities. In June 2004, NATO leaders decided to complete S4 by the end of the year as a result of the improved security situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the wider region. The S4 mission officially ended on December 2, 2004. Instead, an EU lead force was deployed known as Operation Althea. The alliance provides planning, logistics, and common support for EU mission within the framework of a package agreement known as Berlin Plus. The agreement provides the overall framework of NATO cooperation with the European Union. The main role of the NATO military liaison and the Advisory Council is to assist Bosnia and Herzegovina in defense reform. It also aims to help the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina meet the requirements for its participation in the NATO Partnership for Peace or PIP program. Bosnia and Herzegovina became a NATO partner country in December 2006 and focused on promoting democracy, institutional and defense reform, and developing practical cooperation in other areas. The Ukraine-Russia conflict. The conflict currently taking place in Eastern Europe between Ukraine and Russia is not a new conflict because in 2014, Russia had tried to claim Ukraine as a legal part of Russia. Prior to 2014, Ukraine was very close to Russia and served as a buffer zone between Russia and Europe. However, after the 2014 revolution, the Ukrainian government changed course from being close to Russia to being closer to NATO. After the Crimean crisis, the ebb and flow of Russian-Ukrainian relations continued until February 2022. The crisis began when NATO sought to expand its membership to Eastern Europe by targeting Ukraine. NATO's expansion into Eastern Europe jeopardized Russia as it has the potential to transfer ballistic missiles originally stationed in Romania to Ukraine and potentially pose an open threat to Russia, and as a result, President Putin is not letting Ukraine off the hook. NATO, which is the organization of the European Union Defense Alliance, opened the door for Ukraine to join. However, this put Ukraine at the end of the war with Russia. If it chooses to join NATO, support for Ukraine can be said to be quite large. After European leaders have the same vote against Ukraine despite the differences in support offered. What's more, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stressed that his country will continue to strive to become a NATO member despite Russia's anger. Ukraine seems to believe that it should be able to move on the path it has chosen. This belief grew, especially after the US, UK, and several NATO members sent aid to Ukraine in the form of ammunition, missiles, fighter jets, warships, and medical equipment. On the other hand, NATO denies this by stating that number of small countries bordering Russia have now joined NATO as a defense alliance, including Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. NATO's statement, which is considered to have received an international reaction for what happened, including for small countries, basically does not want war. Therefore, many think that if there is a war, it will cause problems for the international community, such as a obstruction of gas supply, especially for the European Union, and other problems related to the security situation in Europe. If an invasion by Russia happened, it would cause instability for Europe. Regarding the indication of the conflict that lead to the Third World War, it is still too far to see the current situation. Well, it brings me to the end of our presentation. Sorry if there are mistakes in both words and action. So if you have any question about the material from our presentation today, feel free to ask, and now we'll be happy to answer any question you may have. I'm Ishiqa Ramadhany Putri, and we are from Group 3. Say goodbye. Thank you all for listening our presentation today, and thank you for your nice attention. May all those we have shared be beneficial for all of us. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.